Crew of the Discovery Shuttle is on to the next phase of the mission. Details now, let's go to John Holloman, who's monitoring that flight from the CNN Center in Atlanta. John.
Reed, on every single shuttle mission, there's one day that people consider a picture day. This particular mission has 3 big picture days. The astronauts still talking about what they saw yesterday as the shuttle and the Russian Mir space station moved to within 37 feet of each other. Commander Jim Weatherby says it was an emotional experience.
It was unbelievable, and I think stunningly beautiful. Made more emotional for us because we know Vladimir. We've been working with him for the last year, and he's become such a close friend of ours. And he spent over a year on that vehicle, and it was his home. And when we saw it, it was amazing. Later on, as we started to separate and they started to rotate and they started firing some of their jets and we were firing our jets, it was a ballet of violence. You could see the jets firing, and it's simply incredible, unbelievable.
Weatherby was interviewed on the ABC television Good Morning America show, while shuttle pilot Eileen Collins says the mission paves the way for the June docking with the Mir, and based on the way the shuttle reacted yesterday, the docking would have been a piece of cake.
Right. There's no doubt that we would have been able to dock based on the way everything went. I did want to say that, yes, I did get a chance to look at the space station also, and it was huge. It was black and white and silver and gold, and it was just a very, very pretty sight.
Flight engineer Mike Foles says the real problem in working with the Russians is not the equipment or the people in space, it's all the politicians on the ground.
The major part of this mission may have been the coordination between our countries in making it come about. And indeed, you've seen how, when you ask Jim and Vladimir how they speak Russian and English to each other, you know, that's one problem we have to overcome, which is language. And also we have different ways maybe of doing things, approaching the same problems, but sometimes coming up with different answers. And learning each other's techniques in solving these things is exactly what this mission is all about. And in fact, as we go on towards the docking missions and we build up towards Space Station Alpha, I think you're going to see that we learn more about not just Russia and America, but all the other international partners in the space station program. And, excuse me, we'll go through the same process, you know, once again and again, each time we fly these flights.
There's even been some discussion from space about American politics on the ground, reacting to a suggestion from U.S. House Speaker Newt Gingrich that the space program should be more privatized with less government involvement. The astronauts were ready to speak out.
Well, I don't even think the question should be asked. There are so many benefits in the space program, and it's well worth the small amount of money that goes into the space program. It benefits a huge number of people around the world, not just Americans and not just Russians, but everyone around the world. As we improve technology, medical technology increases, we make the world a better place to live.
Well, let me say that this was my first launch, and when I walked out to the launch pad 4 or 5 days ago for this mission, I felt very safe because I know the people that worked on this mission, and I know the people that put the orbiter together for this flight, and I had total confidence in them, and I felt very safe flying this mission.
I would not tell only the speaker, but to anyone in Congress, that NASA provides our children, above all, the chance to dream of a better future, and I think Jim hinted to that, and I must emphasize it. What we're doing is the stuff that people dream about, and certainly they were my dreams when I was a boy, a very small one at 6. And it's very, very important that we fuel those dreams of young children and young people everywhere and let them know that there is a future where we can go on out, explore, and bring people together. So that's what NASA is all about, and not only NASA, but the other space programs that are involved in this.
Coming up for the shuttle crew, a spacewalk on Thursday where they'll retrieve the Spartan satellite launched this morning and in which Bernard Harris, a medical doctor and a longtime astronaut, will become the first African-American to walk in space. He and Mike Foale will walk around in the cargo bay holding the satellite in their hands. That should be the 3rd major picture day we'll see from space this week. The astronauts working right now in the Space Hab module that's located just behind their crew cabin in the shuttle. That's what they'll be doing until they go to bed. That'll be coming up just a couple of hours from now. Reed?
All right, thank you, John Holloman. A tour of what's new in space today. Thanks.
Russian cosmonaut Vladimir Titov, who's aboard the shuttle, set loose a small science satellite. He called it Spartan. The satellite will fly free for 2 days to gather information about dust and gas that fills the space between stars. Yesterday, Discovery flew within 37 feet of the Russian space station Mir. That rendezvous was just a warm-up for a planned shuttle space station docking in June.
Released an ultraviolet telescope Tuesday from the end of the shuttle's robot arm, 240 miles or 384 kilometers above Brazil. The satellite, called Spartan, is meant to study interstellar gas and dust, the material from which new stars and planets form. The astronauts are still basking in the afterglow of Monday's successful rendezvous with the Russian space station Mir. Commander James Weatherby called that event the most beautiful thing he'd ever done, with the exception of getting married and fathering 2 children.
Now performing the burn that will separate.
Discovery and Mir separated after a dramatic meeting in space. The shuttle flew around the Mir and sent pictures showing the Russian space station better than any ever seen on the ground. After some worry about possible damage to the Russian ship from a leaking thruster on the U.S. shuttle, the thruster was shut down. The Russian authorities decided it would be safe, and the 2 ships moved together from 4,000 miles apart to 37 feet.
We are bringing our nations closer together. The next time we approach, we will shake your hand, and together we will lead our world into the next millennium.
This is Mission Control Houston. That was Jim Weatherby expressing his feelings at this historic moment.
That's what we're going to do.
2 left.
In response, Alexander Viktrenko, the commander of the Mir crew, expressed his affection for the STS-63 crew and his pride at this moment in time. He said that we were one and we were human, and that all the crew members on orbit right now were involved in the greatest profession God could give anyone.
The astronauts certainly impressed the president.
We're all following you with great anticipation, and we're all so impressed. You know, this really proves, I think, that Russians and Americans can work together and that we can make this International Space Station project successful. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate all the work that all of you have done to that end.
Well, we agree, sir. It's what I kept thinking as we were rendezvousing on Mir was it's a great world.
NASA says the success of the rendezvous gives the Russians and Americans renewed confidence that they'll be able to dock a shuttle with Mir this summer and eventually build an international space station by the year 2000. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
Both checked and double-checked their spacesuits in preparation for a 5-hour spacewalk on Thursday. The Discovery crew has already made a dramatic rendezvous with the Russian space station Mir and released a satellite to study gas and space dust. On Wednesday, Discovery pilot Eileen Collins told a group of students at the school she once attended about the view from space.
I'd have to say that seeing the Earth from space it's just so beautiful. It really changes my outlook on the planet. When I see all the oceans are very blue, I see the clouds that are very white. Yesterday, I saw the Russian space station Mir when we did our rendezvous. The Russian space station is also very beautiful. It's silver and gold, and it's blue and white. The space station has been up here since 1986, and hopefully someday our country will be having a space station also in conjunction with the Russians, and I'm looking forward to that.
Mission Specialist Collins and the rest of the crew are due back on Saturday.
NASA wanted to test their 113-kilogram spacesuits, planning ahead for the construction of a future space station where astronauts could face long periods of time out of the sunlight. That spacewalk was a first for the 2 astronauts, and it was the first ever for a British spacewalker. As CNN's Rob Reynolds reports, traveling in space has been a lifelong ambition, a boy's dream come true for Michael Foale.
Michael Foale became the first British-born astronaut to walk in space Thursday. Foale, distinguishable from partner Bernard Harris by the dark-colored stripes on the legs of his spacesuit, spent several hours clambering around outside Space Shuttle Discovery, testing space station construction techniques and trying out an improved spacesuit. Foale's parents watched their son's space adventure from a television studio in London.
I hope he's having lots of fun, because this is what he's wanted to do for years and years.
There was a time when perhaps I would have liked him to have joined the Royal Air Force, and like I was at the time. But very early on, he went for space.
The dream of space travel has consumed Michael Foale for most of his 38 years. Like thousands of children growing up in the 1960s, Foale built toy rockets and watched TV broadcasts of the Apollo moon landings. But Foale's boyhood dream became a lifelong obsession, leading him to earn a degree in astrophysics at Cambridge University and to leave Britain and become a U.S. citizen in order to qualify for the NASA space program. British reaction to Foale's spacewalk was typically low-key.
Well, it's a nice thing to have somebody from Britain doing it, but so long as they're doing it and they're safe and they get back, it's all forward, it's all advancement.
Oh, it's very exciting. It's really very exciting. It's about time too, I'd say, because we all seem to be lagging behind.
It's quite an everyday occurrence. I mean, in the old days, when a rocket went up there, wow, you know, spaceship's gone up, but now it happens quite often.
Were you aware of that, the first British astronaut to spacewalk?
No, I didn't.
Do you think it's something significant at all?
No, I think it's been done already, and it's probably a waste of money.
Michael Foale would no doubt disagree with that, even though in the end his spacewalk was cut short after he and Harris began to suffer from the intense cold of outer space, something that not even British weather could prepare him for. Rob Reynolds, CNN, London.
Astronauts and a Russian cosmonaut are expected to land in the U.S. state of Florida on Saturday. The highlight of the flight was a close encounter with Russia's Mir space station.
For the past few days, the shuttle crew has been conducting experiments in space station diplomacy with cosmonauts on the Russian space station Mir. John Metaxas has been looking at how the science of space translates into the business on Earth.
Government funding for aerospace research and development is falling like a spent booster rocket. So companies in the space race are taking aim at new markets, like communications and entertainment.
Getting to space is still very expensive, and getting back from space is even more expensive. The only thing that really can do it is the shuttle. So the best thing to send back from space is information, and that can be phone calls, it can be entertainment.
The Commerce Department estimates commercial space revenue zoomed 23% last year. Europe's Arianespace and America's McDonnell Douglas and General Dynamics push profits by launching commercial satellites, while next-generation technology is taking off with mobile communications networks like Motorola's Iridium, L'Oreal's Globestar, and Bill Gates's Teledesic. All are preparing vast webs of low-orbit satellites. Back on the ground, select General Motors dealers and Avis rental counters have just begun offering this space-age option. The GuideStar satellite guidance system will direct you anywhere.
Freeway entrance ahead.
Analysts say similar technology could one day direct trains and planes. Meanwhile, GM's Hughes subsidiary has just started selling direct broadcast satellite TV in the United States, offering 150 channels without cable.
At the end of 1994, after only several months of operation, we were up to 350,000 consumers, which was limited only by the ability of RCA to build the receivers. Now RCA is increasing their production rate, and I'm expecting in 95 we'll be putting on an average of 100,000 or more customers per month.
Yet another place where space has become a great commercial vehicle, on television. There are no fewer than 5 shows set in space and more on the way.
Gentlemen, welcome aboard Voyager.
John Metaxas for CNN Business News, New York.
And that's all for this Friday, February 10th edition of World Business Today. Thanks for joining us. I'm Todd Benjamin, sitting in for John Defterios. Have a great weekend and good night from London.
Members of the 6-person crew spent their last scheduled day in space trying to warm up after cutting short a spacewalk due to freezing cold. We'll bring you live coverage of the Discovery landing, now set to begin at 11:50 GMT. CNN's John Holliman reports the mission was highlighted by a visit to the Russian space station Mir.
On their last scheduled day in space, the astronauts showed great pictures of Earth because that's their next stop. Bernard Harris spent time packing the Spacehab laboratory while the rest of the crew went through last-minute preparations for the homecoming. Commander Jim Weatherby says the rendezvous with Russia's Mir space station was a major success, and he expects the June docking trip to Mir, led by astronaut Hoot Gibson, to be completely successful.
our vehicle flies beautifully. It goes exactly where you put it. It's 120 feet long and over 100 tons, and the jets are firing and the cannons are going off, and there's a lot of noise and shaking and rattling and rolling. But it is precisely flying where you want it to go. You can put it within inches, and so I expect we'll have no problems.
Eileen Collins, the pilot, says she wasn't sure a week ago, but she certainly wants to do this again.
Before this flight, I was kind of wondering how I was going to feel up here in space, if I was going to adapt well, if I was going to like it. The first day, there's always a big transition, but after the first day, I felt very comfortable, and I feel very comfortable now. I like being in space. I like zero gravity. In particular, this mission has been absolutely amazing. There's been a little bit of everything that I've had a chance to look at. I know I like this job, and I plan on flying again.
Mike Foale, one of two spacewalkers who got cold in the darkness of space yesterday, says his fingers were frigid every time he tried to work with them.
Well, I'm sure you've all picked up snow when you've had your gloves on, but you've taken your gloves off and you put your fingers into the snow to make a snowball. That really was the contrast. When I would pull my hands back out of the glove, it would be warm, and then when I would put my fingers into the fingertips, that was the shock that I felt in my fingers. So I was quite alarmed by that.
If Discovery lands in Florida, the shuttle will fly over much of the United States on its final few minutes of flight, from Tacoma, Washington to the Kennedy Space Center. But cloudy weather in Florida is threatening the on-schedule landing. John Holloman, CNN reporting.
And Discovery is scheduled to land at Florida Space Center at 11:50 GMT Saturday, and CNN International plans to bring that to you live.
Spectacular view of home from high above the Earth, while the crew of the shuttle Discovery prepares to return home. The crew of 6 has spent 8 days in space, highlighted by an historic rendezvous with the Russian space station Mir. The Space Shuttle Discovery is scheduled to land at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, weather permitting, at 11:50, 100 hours GMT.
The following is CNN's coverage of a live event.
The live event of the morning, the landing of the Space Shuttle Discovery. Good morning, I'm John Holloman at CNN Center, and we're going to go right now to the live NASA picture as Discovery is about 20 miles away from its landing. A very good tracking camera is following the space shuttle. The glow that you see on the front of the wings and on the nose and coming out of the rear is because this camera has an infrared mode, and you're seeing the heat signature of the plane as it comes down. The shuttle has slowed its speed from 17,400 miles an hour to less than 400 miles an hour right now as it makes its trip down toward the runway at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It descended from 200 miles above the Earth to a few thousand feet up. And Commander Jim Weatherby is on final approach to the Kennedy Space Center landing strip right now. Since leaving the Earth 8 days, 6 hours, and about 27 minutes ago, Discovery has traveled 2,992,860 miles, and it's gone around the world 130 times. All this during its jam-packed mission. The astronauts launched a satellite to study ultraviolet radiation in the space between distant stars. They picked up that same satellite 2 days later and conducted a spacewalk to determine how well the NASA spacesuit protects astronauts from the 125 degree below zero temperature in deep space. The answer? Not well enough. And a new series of space gloves will have to be developed, and perhaps some foot insulation for the astronauts as well. The premier event on this mission was Rendezvous with Russia's Mir space station. Discovery was steered to within 37 feet of the Russian spaceship, orbiting 250 miles up. The astronauts and cosmonauts were able to see each other clearly through windows and portholes in their two ships.
Altitude
the shuttle
13,000 feet.
Now 7 miles from touchdown. It's flying at 30,000 feet, according to NASA commentator James Hartsfield. We're in the final 2 minutes of Discovery's flight, we were told right now.
Remain 180 at 6, peaking to 8.
The commander and pilot just got a wind check from their ground controllers.
Runway 15 is right on target.
They'll be landing to the southeast toward the Florida coast at the Kennedy Space Center landing strip. And now here's a picture that's not infrared. This is a picture from a regular television camera as the shuttle makes its final descent to runway 15, which means that it's the runway that points toward the southeast from the Kennedy Space Center. The astronauts have had a lot to say to us during this mission.
4,000 feet.
We'll watch the final few seconds of the mission, listening to commentator James Hartsfield, and I'll tell you some of the things they have been telling us over the past 12 or 15 hours, just as they reflected on what they've been able to do on this mission. This, again, live picture from a camera on the ground at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The sun is scheduled to come up. The sun will come up, whether it's scheduled to or not, in about 7 or 8 minutes. And Commander Weatherby wanted to do a landing in total darkness, but here we go. He's going to have a little
landing gears
early
down and
dawn
locked.
light.
Main gear touchdown. Discovery standing by for drag, shoot, deploy. Nose gear touchdown. Discovery rolling out after 3 million miles and 130 orbits.
Even though the Space Shuttle does not have any engines that operate at this point, even though it lands like a glider with no propellers, no jet engines, it makes a great deal of noise. You can see on the tail of the shuttle, the tail is spread apart now. That's part of the speed braking system to make it slow down, along with that parachute that comes out. Slowing to a stop now, probably will be at full stop in a matter of seconds. The astronauts and their ground controllers will have a little conversation as soon as they stop, and we'll let you listen in to that.
Roger, we'll stop Discovery. Welcome home and congratulations on an outstanding mission. Y'all did a terrific job up there.
There you have it, the completion of the mission of Space Shuttle Discovery. We're going to take a break. We'll come back and rejoin Global View in Progress in just a minute.
Hello and welcome. An 8-day adventure in space rolled smoothly to an end a short while ago. The U.S. Space Shuttle Discovery touched down safely at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The landing ends a mission that made a close encounter with the Russian space station Mir. Later in our show, we'll have a full report on Discovery's mission and the crew's accomplishments with CNN's John Holloman. It was a space mission both historic and dramatic. The U.S. Shuttle Discovery touched down at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida a short while ago. And here to help us wrap up that mission is CNN's John Holloman. So, John, what kind of a mission was it in your view?
Well, the people at NASA think it was a near-perfect mission. So here there were a couple of problems with it, but the fact that the shuttle is back on the ground safe and sound is certainly good. The shuttle is back on Earth, landed on schedule at Florida's Kennedy Space Center with its cargo of 1 cosmonaut, 1 British-born spacewalker, 2 women, and 2 other men. Laboratory rats growing wheat and soybean plants after 8 days, 6 hours, 28 minutes, and 15 seconds in weightlessness. Let me do this. Let me show you some recent pictures of the astronauts as they got off of the space shuttle and began to walk around their spaceship. There they are as they're coming out being congratulated by NASA officials and members of the launch team who helped them get up into orbit successfully and also help them get back on Earth. It's unusual after some time in weightlessness to be able to see astronauts right away, because you'd think they might have some trouble readapting to the Earth's gravity. Not the case here, apparently. There's Vladimir Titov. He looks great. Looks like he's happy to be home. Behind him you can see Eileen Collins, the shuttle's pilot. And in these pictures, which were recorded a little while earlier, you can also see Michael Foale, one of the spacewalkers, and Bernard Harris out there on the tarmac. We'll see more of them as I continue telling you about the mission. The landing at the Kennedy Space Center involved some last-minute steering of the 211,318-pound spaceship by Commander Jim Weatherby, because there were some crosswinds at the shuttle landing strip at Kennedy Space Center. But the shuttle is still now. The crew coming out, as we told you, and NASA is calling this a picture-perfect mission.
Nose gear touchdown.
Not even a spectacular night launch could provide the best picture from Discovery's jam-packed mission. Perhaps it was the rendezvous with the Mir space station that will remain in your memory for a while. The astronauts and cosmonauts waving at each other from 37 feet apart. For the commander, this was certainly the big deal of the mission, but he's also thinking about the 5 people who have been his constant companions for the past 12 months.
And these are 5 of the
finest people on the planet. They're very precise in what they do, and I've enjoyed tremendously working with them. By the way, the Rendezvous is not a one-person job. We had Mike on the laser system. Eileen was on the radar. And everybody is helping me trying to figure out which way to go and how far away we are and what the range and range rate is. So the crew makes the flight special for me, working with them for the last year. We now are all very good friends of Vladimir Titov. I will be his friend until the day I die.
Or maybe it was the spacewalk in which Mike Foale and Bernard Harris made history in the very cold shuttle cargo bay. They got so cold they had to stop their experiments. But for the first African-American to walk in space, it was still meaningful.
For me, it really is a personal achievement, a great personal achievement, one that I looked for a long time. And I think it's kind of ironic that during this month, this is Black History Month, that we're celebrating the contributions that African-Americans have made to this country. But I have an opportunity to walk outside in space, that is, an EVA. I get emotional when I think about it. And I'd like to dedicate this spacewalk, my first spacewalk as an African-American, and as an African-American, to all African-Americans, to African-American achievement.
The shuttle pilot, Eileen Collins, made history as the first woman to do that job. For her, this mission also has special meaning.
I tell everybody that if you have a dream, it's possible. I made it here, and if you want to do that someday, you can too, if you only work hard enough.
Even before Discovery landed, the next shuttle, Endeavour, was rolled out to the Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex. Its date with history will come the first week in March.
So, John, what is next for the astronauts?
Well, good news for Eileen Collins, the first woman shuttle pilot. Got the word yesterday before she landed that she is now in line to be the commander of a future shuttle mission. That's good for her. Vladimir Titov is who you see there as he got off this first mission in an American spaceship. Is going to stay in the United States for a little while. He'll go back to Russia, and he'll be briefed and debriefed by other cosmonauts about how it is to ride with the Americans and fly with them. The rest of the team this afternoon, after some medical checkups, will be back with their families for, I'm sure, a much-needed reunion. Up next for the Space Shuttle launch team, a couple of days off. Then it's back to work for the launch of Endeavour, which you saw there a few minutes ago, on a 16-day trip to study the stars and the effects of weightlessness on people, animals, and plants. That launch could come as soon as the 1st of March. That's just 18 days from now. And as you might expect, CNN International will be here to provide live coverage.
Thank you, John. Hopefully then we'll talk again.
All right. I'll bet we will.
CNN's John Holloman, thank you so much for being with us. So, the high point of the 8-day mission was Discovery's successful rendezvous with the Russian space station Mir. 2 of Discovery's 6-member crew also went on a spacewalk, and a science satellite was deployed and retrieved.
Höhepunkt der 67. Shuttle-Mission war die Annäherung an die russische Raumstation Mir.
Florida, 6:50 Uhr Ortszeit, Bilderbuchlandung der Raumfähre Discovery in Cape Canaveral und Ende einer Mission, die Mensch und Material einiges abverlangte. Zum Beispiel während des russisch-amerikanischen Rendezvous im All. Bis auf 11 Meter hatte sich Discovery am Montag der Raumstation Mir genähert. Eine Generalprobe für das im Juni geplante Andocken. Doch es war nicht der einzige Höhepunkt. Beim Spaziergang im All wurden neue Raumanzüge getestet und der Satellit Spartan eingefangen. Kaum Zeit also, die Flugbahnen der Sternschnuppen zu verfolgen oder wie hier einen Blick auf das südliche Afrika zu werfen.
Tägigem Flug ist die US-Raumfähre Discovery heute Mittag in Cape Canaveral im Bundesstaat Florida sicher gelandet. Höhepunkt der Mission war die Annäherung an die russische Weltraumstation Mir. Bis auf 12 Meter war die Discovery herangeflogen. Im Juni soll die US-Fähre Atlantis richtig ankoppeln und der russischen Raumstation neues Material bringen. Mit an Bord bei diesem Flug waren der russische Kosmonaut Titov und zum ersten Mal eine Pilotin, die Amerikanerin Eileen Collins.
240 miles above the Earth, orbiting the globe at more than 17,000 miles an hour, the crew of the Shuttle Discovery earned a secure place in the annals of space history this week. The mission ushered in a new era of multinational cooperation in space and set a multicultural first. On Thursday, astronaut Bernard Harris became the first African-American to walk in space. He and Michael Foale spent about 4 hours in the void. With Discovery's belly facing the sun, they were extended into shaded open space by the shuttle's robotic arm. For almost 20 minutes, they floated there, nearly motionless, in temperatures approaching 120 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit.
I think the gloves work real good. I don't know if we have any thermal covering in the feet. My feet are actually pretty comfortable.
Foale and Harris were wired with heat sensors to test some modifications in the U.S. spacesuit. Additional insulation was added to the gloves and thermal underwear, and cooling tubes were removed from the arms. But during the next task, lifting and handling a large satellite, both Foale and Harris were bothered by cold, numb hands.
I know that when I start grasping with my hands, they will get very rapidly cold because of the fingertips.
Okay, Mike. We're going to set up for a maneuver here in the cockpit.
Not long after that, mission controllers cut short the spacewalk so the astronauts could warm up. During the next shuttle spacewalk, scheduled for July, astronauts will test some apparently needed heated gloves. Nothing chilly about the marquee event of this mission. On Monday, Discovery's astronauts exchanged warm greetings with the crew of the Russian space station Mir. Despite a bulky thruster which made the Russians a bit nervous, Discovery crept to within 40 feet of the huge space station. It was a dress rehearsal for June's planned Shuttle Mir docking. One of the crew members aboard Discovery was Russian cosmonaut Vladimir Titov, who has logged more than 366 days in Mir. The U.S. and Russian space programs will play a primary role in building an orbiting international space station. That's some view. In all, 7 Shuttle Mir dockings are planned as a prelude to that formidable challenge.
This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours in holding, with 1 hour 16 minutes remaining in this built-in hold. During this hold, the final inspection team is on the pad for most of the entire duration of that 2-hour period. They entered the pad as we went to the T-minus 3 hour and holding point at about 6 o'clock this evening. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours and holding. The closeout crew is in the White Room awaiting the arrival of the astronaut in about another 90 minutes' time. Temperature at launch time expected to be about 49 degrees with easterly winds 8 to 12 knots and a humidity about 70%, visibility 7 to 10 miles. This is Shuttle Launch Control at T-minus 3 hours and holding. We're now live in the crew quarters where we are undergoing our suit-up activities for tonight. There's Dr. Bernard Harris, mission specialist number 1. Michael Foale, mission specialist Dr. Foale's MS number 2. He's our flight engineer on this mission. And there we have Vladimir Titov, making his first flight on the shuttle. He spent 1 year on board the Mir space station. This is his 3rd flight in space. And he'll be doing a lot of the communications between the shuttle and the Mir. There's our first woman pilot, Eileen Collins, making her first flight. Janice Foss making her 2nd flight. She's prime on the RMS for the Spartan retrieval, among other things. And that appears to be our commander, Jim Weatherby. He's making his 3rd flight on STS-63. At T-minus 3 hours and holding, this is Shuttle Launch Control. And here they come. James Weatherby, Commander James Weatherby, pilot Eileen Collins, Mission Specialist Michael Foll, Mission Specialist Janice Voss, Dr. Bernard Harris, and Vladimir Titov. Standing by now to pick up the countdown. We have about 15 seconds remaining in the hold. And again, we're not working any problems in the countdown tonight at all so far. 4, 3, 2, 1, and we're at T-minus 3 hours and counting. This is shuttle launch control at T-minus 2 hours, 41 minutes, 30 seconds and counting. In the White Room now, we see Commander Jim Weatherby being assisted with his launch and entry suit as he prepares to enter Space Shuttle Discovery. And Janice, Eileen Collins will be sitting in the right front seat of Discovery. And on she goes. T-minus 4 minutes.
let's go for approach sequence 4.
Preparing now to gimbal the main engines of the orbiter and the flight controls. We see now the orbiter's elevon being moved. Standing by to retract the Cox VIN arm, the Cox beanie cap.
TLT OTC, clear caution and warning memory and verify no unexpected errors.
TLT, that's working, no unexpected errors.
OTC copies.
Cassini's oxygen VIN hood now being moved off the top of the tank and retracted to the launch position. Liquid oxygen tank now at flight pressure.
Discovery crew, OTC, close and lock your visors. Initiate O2 flow. Have a good flight. That's in work, and thanks a lot.
Standing by to turn off the heaters on the solid rocket booster joints. And then we'll have a final check of the booster commands. Solid rocket booster nozzles being gimbaled. T-minus 18 seconds. Solid rocket boosters armed. Sound suppression water system activated.
10.
T-minus 10 seconds. Go for main engine start. Main engines now started. Main engines up and running. 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery on a mission to prepare for the next era of world cooperation in space.
Hello, program Houston.
Roger, roll, Discovery. Houston is now controlling Discovery on its 20th trip to space. Discovery rolling on course for an orbit with the Mir space station. Mir currently half a world away above the Indian Ocean. Three engines on Discovery now throttling down to 2/3 throttle. Discovery's altitude now 17 nautical miles, 15 nautical miles northeast of the Kennedy Space Center. Discovery traveling 2,800 miles per hour. Flight controllers standing by for burnout and jettison of the twin solid rockets. Booster officer confirms a good separation and jettison of the twin solid rockets. Discovery now in its second stage, 3 main engines.
Включение двигателей есть старт. Ланч.
Начался отсчет. Уже полет, но времени желательно смотреть на наши.
Bio, did I see that we're predicting a two-stage bucket here?
Flight Fighter, I believe that's true.
Okay.
$15. 10. TLS's go for main engine start.
All vents open.
Copy vents.
T0 SRB ignition. Liftoff.
Liftoff confirmed.
Copy liftoff.
Hello, program Houston.
SRB set.
Copy SRB set.
Stand by for 2-engine TAL. Mark.
Discovery, 2-engine TAL.
2-engine TAL.
103 converged.
Copy 103.
Performance nominal.
Discovery, performance nominal.
Nominal performance.
No action. R1U L2D failed off.
Discovery Houston, nominal MECO, OHMS 1 is not required. We also see R1U and L2D failed off, no action at this time.
Unlatch. Gotta find someplace for this diffuser cap.
It was a good place. Yes, there, over there.
But see, right here there's a pad. That was where the pad was. Let's just go on there.
The Guidance, Navigation, and Control Officer here in Mission Control reports that the crew has completed their Flight Control Systems checkout, and Data Processing Systems Officer reports that the onboard flight control computers for Discovery are now being transitioned from the checkout software they've been in for the past hour and 15 minutes back to the software that is the standard for orbital operations. That checkout appeared to go very well with no problems seen by flight controllers on the ground. All of Discovery's systems in good shape for the return home planned for Saturday.
Okay, lights 3G1, 3G2, and 3G3. Flickering only 3G3. One grab. And next, lights HD1, HD2, and HD3. After power on was green, were green. After 4 minutes, right now red.
As an extension to the middeck of the space shuttle, allowing experiments to be stowed along in middeck lockers seen on the right-hand side of this television view. On board Space Hab for this flight are 20 different experiments that have been operating for the past 3 days.
Space Hab back, Discovery Force, DZBA.
Go ahead.
Terminate gaps 12 and 13 complete. Gap 13 was at 5/5:15.
Copy that. Thanks.
Houston Discovery, torpedoes on glow.
Go ahead, Mike.
Story, I just switched out the VIUCM, and once again I have the same signature. I must say I think it's the signal and not so much the configuration.
Okay, thanks for your efforts. Wex, we suggest you go to the other controller, and as you know, you just pin it to the other actuator and select the other controller on L1.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
And Clay, I've cycled the circuit breaker on the SEU number 1.
Copy that. Thanks.
And Discovery Houston, on camera Bravo, we've had some last-minute requests from Oderax to do some adjusting for camera Bravo. We're going to do that at this time. No action.
Roger. First one's away, Houston. First sphere. And there goes a dipole. There goes a second sphere. And a dipole. There's the third sphere. And a dipole.
And we
proper velocities.
And we copy Wex. We watched it from the ground. It was very interesting. And we have camera D at this time, Eileen.
Okay, thanks. Houston Discovery, here comes the door closure.
And we copy and we're watching.
Doors moving. disregard the RS-422. I found it downstairs in the middeck.
That's good news, Mike. Discovery Houston, when somebody has a chance, we'd like you to turn on tips. We have a couple of messages to send up to you. There'll be messages number 8 and 17.
G1 plus 325, stop maneuver rotation.
And we copy.
Good morning from the flight deck of Discovery. We're in preparations, final preparations for our rendezvous with Mir, which will occur in a couple of hours. We'll initiate the final portion and enter the checklist here in a couple of hours. I thought I'd walk around or float around the cockpit and show you a little bit about what we'll be doing in the next 4 hours. Both Eileen and I will be up in the forward part of the flight deck in our seats for the first part of the rendezvous. And let me step back just a second. The very first maneuver that we accomplished for the rendezvous occurred at launch. We waited until the launch pad was in the plane of the Mir, and then we quickly launched into that plane. Ever since launch, we've been doing a couple of burns to optimize the trajectory in preparation for the rendezvous. When we get into the final portion of the rendezvous timeline here in an hour or two, Eileen and I will both be in our forward flight deck seats. Most of the burns that we accomplish at that point will be targeted by the ground, or I guess all of them will be targeted by the ground. It's all done automatically by computers. We just verify the data and enter it into the keyboards and then execute the burn. As we get into the middle portion of the rendezvous, it becomes ground targeted. We have onboard steering, but it's a manually flown burn. We will actually control the burn manually via that ground targeting. Eventually we go to onboard targeting, where the sensors on board the vehicle are a little bit more accurate than the ground tracking solutions. And so we do that manually up here on the front part of the flight deck. As we get into the final portion, I will float to the aft station and we'll perform the last couple of burns before getting into proximity operations from the aft station. I will be looking out the overhead windows facing backwards in the vehicle, but of course in space everything is relative, so it doesn't matter. We have a set of controls back here, and we can fly translations of our vehicle with this hand controller and rotations from this hand controller, although the rotations are typically all done automatically. We will acquire visual sight of the mirror at this overhead window, and I have a COAS sight, or a hard-mounted manual sight in the overhead window. When all else fails, Mike is going to tell you a little bit about his magic devices and his ranging sensors. When all else fails, if they start acting funny or the radar starts walking around on the mirror giving us bad navigation, we always have the old iron sight at the top window, which never moves, and there's no software, and so it's a reliable piece of gear, and then we just fly visually. As we panel around over to the port side of the vehicle, I'll take the camera and I'll offer the mic to Mike, and he'll tell you a little bit about his magic sensors.
And Houston, while Jim is over there on the starboard side, looking out over the overhead window, up that way, basically Vladimir, myself, and Eileen will be on the flight deck supporting him, and we'll be using the rendezvous tools. And these are computers that we have set up specifically that will allow us to plot the rendezvous going on here and on here. And we'll have trajectory displays from our different sensors that are in the payload bay. I actually have a handheld laser also that I will shoot out of the window, and I will be pointing it up out of the overhead. And this handheld laser is really no different from anything that the police would use to do traffic patrol monitoring. And we can basically point it out of the window and pull the trigger, and I get a readout on the back of it as to how far away the mirror will be, and also how fast Jim is closing on it. In fact, when I pull the trigger, it will actually be displayed back here on these computers, and I can take those range marks and put them into the computer and get an idea as to how our trajectory towards the mirror is progressing.
This is Mission Control Houston. We continue to receive a television image from Discovery as Discovery passes to the west of Australia of the Mir space station, currently lying less than 200 nautical miles ahead. Mir is the steady bright light located in the upper center of the television image. Discovery just moving into sunset. Also visible in the image are pieces of ice and fuel that is leaked from steering jets, and also other such items that remain with the shuttle as it circles in orbit and are very visible during times of sunrise and sunset. Those particles show up very brightly.
Discovery, good config. Go for the burn.
Roger, go for the burn.
Can you see the configuration?
Configuration right now. looks like station and 3 levels of solar battery. It's nice. I can probably
What is this? What is this right here?
And Houston Discovery, I have my first mark at 3,037.
Copy, Mike. In Discovery, we'd like a low Z at 1,000 feet.
Low Z selected.
Updated.
1,023, Houston.
Copy.
And Houston Discovery, the LTI off the docking port is 424, and TCS is showing 428, so it's about what we always predicted.
Thanks, Mike.
Copy, Mike. Tell him block 24 Alpha some more. You probably should be consistent. Right, can you pass the mic? I'm here to Houston block 24 Alpha.
По-моему, это Сережа был, да?
Лена, я тебя слышу хорошо. Как меня прием?
Houston Discovery on CRT4.
In Houston, when can you get cameras again?
Just about now.
Good. It's unbelievable.
Mike, we're thinking your TCS elevation may depend on what reflectors you're locked onto.
Okay, story Alpha. Houston Discovery on our camera, we temporarily zoomed in just to make sure that the sun doesn't enter the field of view.
One degree, 9 o'clock, Houston.
Привет,
Copy, wings.
Сколько сейчас расстояние, Володь? Сейчас расстояние 16 метров. 15 метров.
Лена, как меня слышно? Прием.
2.5 degrees, 10 o'clock.
Москва, мир,
Я тебя принял, я тебя слышу хорошо. Прием.
Мы наблюдаем экипаж Discovery. Очень хорошо его видно. Солнышко дыхает. Очень хорошо видно Володю. Прием.
Я очень рад. Прием.
Elaine. What do we do when we get up top? What page am I on?
The next block is 38 Alpha, which is on page 38.
Okay.
And we do that at, it's the next thing we do.
Okay.
At the Lettuce Oven.
How confident are you in that?
Pretty good now. Oops, stop that now. Stop it. What are those pulses you're doing there?
Closing.
Okay. Quit doing that. Let's start taking ranges again. 581. 585.
Сереж, дело в том, что когда они были вот на отходе, то показывали. Вот сейчас
Discovery has started a slow ascent from the velocity vector.
О, видно, есть иллюминатор Титова.
Так пусть вылезает теперь, что же.
О, теперь видно и наш флаг родной. Издалека.
Here, Discovery.
Discovery for Velocia.
Our spaceships closer together. We are bringing our nations closer together. The next time we approach, we will shake your hand, and together we will lead our world into the next millennium. Как мы сблизили наши космические корабли, так мы сблизили наши нации. В следующий раз, когда мы встретимся, мы пожмем друг другу руки и вместе войдем в следующее тысячелетие.
Это комкодер, да? А вот хорошо видно сейчас было струю.
было очень хорошо еще, Сереж, видно, когда он тоже подходил. И малые работали, и вот эти носовые.
Ага, так лучше чуть-чуть отъехать.
Meanwhile, we're getting live pictures from inside the Mir space station. This is physician Dr. Valery Polyakov. He currently has the record for the most time spent on orbit by any human.
По весне показывали такие ножнички, говорит, вот, говорит, мы приобрели специально для того, чтобы послать на борт. Замечательные ножницы.
Houston, Discovery.
Go ahead, Discovery.
Yes, sir. As the sun came up, they were in the maneuver, of course, and they're firing jets. We're firing jets. Their arrays are moving.
Мы закончили разворот, у нас есть, говорит.
It's a beautiful sight. It's a great world.
It is a great world, Wanks. Up there and down here.
Как кадр, вот спрашивает Степанович.
Хорошо, прямо в центре экрана, все отлично идет.
Картинка хорошая, очень хорошая.
Spasiba. I want to say that Mir is very beautiful, and it was very shiny, and we are very happy to meet you in the sky.
Алин, ваш корабль, ваш Discovery тоже великолепен. И нам особенно приятно было за ним наблюдать, зная, что ты находишься в этом корабле еще и пилотом. Всего самого доброго тебе.
Spasiba, you are very nice, and maybe someday we can meet. До свидания.
До свидания. Счастливо.
Discovery, a magnificent picture, mirror crossing the horizon.
Well, we should have it on IMAX also, and we certainly have it in all of our eyes.
Yes, sir.
Заснял сквозь тот иллюминатор поцарапанный 37КЭ, как вы уходили за кромку, за контуры нашего грузовика. Грузовик мы назвали «Совраска».
Flight teams. Go ahead, GNC. Yeah, we think we have good angles with TCS.
Okay. And how did you have, what, AS-L?
Yes, sir.
What can you tell me there?
AS is minus 2.1, L is 1.06.
Houston, we are seeing absolutely no motion in the arrays from where we float.
Rendezvous copy.
Understand.
Copy, Wanks.
And Flight Fido?
And Valogic confirms that from their position.
Go ahead, Fido.
I think that dot to the right of the orbiter is Venus.
Okay.
Discovery for Wanks.
Go ahead, he's listening.
Okay, Eileen, we have been watching you all on the flight deck, and we have been looking at your smiles, so some of this information may have gotten to you by another means, but you are go to approach to 10 meters.
Thank you very much, Story, and to everybody who worked the issue, again, thank you very much.
You're welcome, and thank you for all you have done.
And Discovery Houston, it's handover down here and handover time down here in the control center. Rob and Mark will take it from here. Paul and I have had a pleasure putting their things together. Have a great time, enjoy the view outside, and heads up, watch out for that first step. It's a long one.
Harrison Full are currently going through checkouts of their spacesuits to ensure that they're in good working order before they begin a pre-breathe again of pure oxygen that will last 4 hours.
Begin push clock.
And we copy, Volodya.
This view showing Mike Full suited up in the airlock, and Bernard Harris.
Once again, Mike Full is EV1 and is wearing red stripes on the legs of his spacesuit, and Bernard Harris is EV2.
I'm on my way.
Okay.
Mission Specialist Mike Full has completed installing the large handling tool on the Spartan spacecraft. He will now go to a point where he will be able to ingress the portable foot restraint on the end of the robot arm. Bernard Harris is currently installing a small handling tool on the other side of Spartan. Mission Specialist Vladimir Titov will now maneuver the robot arm to a position where the two spacewalking astronauts are well above the payload bay. This will put them in an environment that is as cold as possible.
And maybe, Bernard, with your feet against the hardware,
Yeah.
you might have some thermal transfer.
I think that's probably what's happening because rather than have the inserts, I've got the 3 pairs of socks. I copy that, I mean Friedrich.
Going to release on my mark. 3, 2, 1, release.
Go to release, Michael.
I see it moving.
Be careful. Spartan is clear.
It's released.
Be careful.
And Bernard, I felt the springs push up on it. Yep. And it's tipped up on this end, Mike. Okay. I'm going to lift it out of the guides very slowly. How high am I in the guides on that side? You're 2 inches above the guides on this side and seem to be tipped toward me.
That's correct, Mike. You're a little bit lower on your side and higher on Bernard's side.
Okay.
Discovery.
Okay, you're coming up.
Unfortunately, we're a minute and a half to Teeter's LOS. Get you back at 9 hours and 5 minutes.
Mike, do you have your hands pulled out of the gloves? Yes, I do, and that's the best way to do it.
And Mike, one action for you to help you warm up if you want is to set your water to off.
Michael, I am ready to maneuver.
I am ready, Claudia.
Okay, start to forward.
That's good. Continue. Okay, Ali, my left tether is closed and locked on the longeron.
Okay, I copy that. Next is to disconnect your slide wire safety tether from the end effector.
You ready to go down? Sorry? You ready? Yeah. Just a second. Okay. You got it. I got it. Uh-oh. I have it still tied to me. And I have let go of my tether.
Looks like it's going on. Let's check.
Well, this, in this SMS, that pink comes on a lot later than you're seeing it.
Yeah.
It's night, maybe. Right. Because we're not even fellows with guidance yet.
Yeah, we're starting to get some indicators. Shoot.
Hold on, Jim.
Landing gear's down and locked. Main gear touchdown. Discovery standing by for drag chute deploy. Nose gear touchdown. Discovery rolling out after 3 million miles and 130 orbits.
Roger, we'll stop Discovery. Welcome home and congratulations on an outstanding mission. Y'all did a terrific job up there.
Flight GNC, CSS all axes.
3,000, about 3,000 feet low there at the 180.
Low at the 180.
Discovery ought to put you low at the 180. Roger. Discovery on glide slope and center line. Surface winds remain 180 at 6, peaking to 8.